Hello, and welcome to Seek the Magic. Today, I want to talk about serendipity because I think it can be a beautiful, magical part of our lives if we let it. And it has certainly helped me and, guided me in different parts of my life. So, first of all, what is serendipity? Well, a definition, according to one dictionary, is that it's finding something valuable or delightful when you're not looking for it. So discovering something by chance, making a connection, and it can occur in all aspects of life. And so, one example of serendipity that occurred a few years ago for me was when we were looking at different houses in the North Carolina area. And we weren't quite sure what we were going to do. And it's just, the housing market is intense and there are lots of different houses and you're overwhelmed with information. And I noticed one house with the number 203, and 203 is also the area code of Connecticut where I grew up, and it's still the beginning of my phone number. And so since 203 popped out, I said, oh, we should go visit that house because it has the area code. So two unrelated things, some, random number that may not have made a connection for a lot of people, but I said, oh, it's my area code. We're going to look at the house. So we ended up looking at the house. It was a great house. And, I said, okay, well, maybe we can make an offer. And if this makes sense, it makes sense. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, sort of, detach from it. But it was not in our immediate search area. It wasn't something that we, probably would have had on our, major list of criteria, but it ended up being a wonderful house to look at. And we liked it so much. And it ended up that we are in that house right now. So the reason why I bring this up is because serendipity can take you out of your analytical mind because it's connecting two things that aren't necessarily related. It takes you out of your logical mind. And in some instances, people, especially in the logical Western world, will want to ignore those signals, but sometimes they can lead you to wonderful places. Serendipity, I would say I first came across that term in books, when I was in middle school and high school. And then, of course, famously, and maybe not so famously to everyone, but in 2001, there was a movie called Serendipity with John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale, which took place in New York City and various other locations. And it was about how they met each other and then they were apart and they said, oh, if we're meant to be together, then we will, connect again. And of course, I was a junior in high school when this came out and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I absolutely love it. And so, from there, serendipity kind of, stuck in my head. And then later I lived in New York and there is a restaurant in New York called Serendipity, which is quite famous and a destination for tourists to go to. So, obviously I had to go there and have a meal and, was slightly underwhelmed, but, still making that connection as well. So when I think about serendipity, I associate it with the 2001 rom-com and also that place in New York. But then at the same time, I really have been intentional about following those leads or those connections when they come up in my mind, such as when looking for a house, this house is maybe slightly outside of the location that we're looking, but it's 203. So let's go check it out and follow that lead. And then, eventually the connection comes into place that this is the house we're living in. Some other things have happened related to that have been influential. When I was in my first job in California, I would run along the road in the suburbs. I worked at Google, and so I'd run every day around the neighborhood. And it happened that one day, one of my friends in college had moved back to California where she was from, and she saw me running on the bridge, and she pinged me. I think at the time, she either used AOL Instant Messenger or Facebook and said, oh, I'm in California. You're in California too. I had no idea. And we connected and we ended up being roommates. And now she's one of my best friends. And my daughter is named Catherine, partially an inspiration to her because she's had such an influence on my life. So had it not been for that one moment of coincidence and her, seeing me and then following that instinct and saying, hey, I saw you, let's, connect. It's just like, that connection on that one day had, an influence on the path we went through. Another example of that is when I was listening to a lecture and, it reminded me to call my friend that I hadn't called in a while. And that ended up, leading to a conversation that sparked another idea and different path that I've gone on. So I've very much appreciated when moments of delight that have sparked ideas have come up, and I've benefited from when I followed them. Of course, this doesn't always happen. Sometimes, you will go down, you will follow something and it won't necessarily lead in the right direction. But, it's worth pursuing and using that balance of your logical mind and then, also something that may have been presented to you that you may not have considered. So serendipity in brain side of things is connected to our default mode network, which is responsible for mind wandering and daydreaming and creative thinking. So it's active when we're not exactly focused on something, but then our minds wander and it can catch our attention. So, in that case, the number of the area code of our house, I was looking at different houses and things like that. And the 203 sparked something slightly unrelated, but made a connection, and that moved forward and impacted where we ultimately decided to live. And, with my friend, we were both commuting. Well, I was running, she was commuting to work, and made the connection and followed up. And that made impact for us and how we connected and spend our time together and are best friends because of it. So just in this book I was reading, a study published by the Journal of Science found that people who are more prone to mind wandering are likely to make creative breakthroughs and experience serendipity. So this connects to my pursuit of meditation and being open to what things are available to us and to think of outside the box a bit. So I think serendipity can be scary sometimes because it connects us to the fear of the unknown, or it takes us out of our very procedural, logical day-to-day, I have to get through this list of things to do. But at the same time, I think it can lead to greater magic and more excitement and delight in life. So I encourage you to follow those connections and those moments that spark some idea or something different or something new. And I would say sometimes situations are unknown and, there are a lot of variables into going into new situations, but that's also how we grow. And I think using moments of connection, surprise and delight, things like that, they can help lead us into a right direction and make us feel a little safer, maybe a little more guided as we move forward. So that's certainly something I look at, especially because I certainly get anxious when I'm trying something new. However, I'm also very eager to expand, learn, grow, test myself, things like that. So when I, see moments or see signals of things that show me there is a connection, maybe it's not like the logical or statistical connection to, persuade me to do something, but maybe it's you could call it a sign, something like that can help guide you in the right direction. And I think this helps us become more adaptable. It helps us explore. It helps us reach our edges, and it helps us find the delight and helps us find the unexpected in life. So I would encourage you, this audience, to pay attention to serendipity and to also take moments to be open, to let your mind wander, to experience what is outside of the focus point and see what comes of it and follow it, because that can lead to so many beautiful things. So that's all I have for today, and I hope you seek the magic in your day today. Thank you.